Hypnosis is not magic but the art of bending perception, where the illusion of free will masks the reality of control. And if one looks deeply into this phenomenon, one will see that the so-called hypnosis test, often dismissed as a trick or a curiosity, is in fact a small demonstration of a much larger truth about human nature, the truth that men and women alike can be guided, molded, and even compelled without realizing it, because their minds are not bastions of independence but porous vessels that absorb suggestion, respond to tone, and surrender to confidence. And this is why the test works. Why a man who believes he cannot open his eyes suddenly finds them sealed as though by an invisible force, or why a woman asked to imagine her hand glued to the table begins to struggle with visible frustration, when reason should tell her the glue does not exist, yet she feels it as real. For the body obeys the image implanted in the mind, and here lies the revelation. That authority is not brute force alone but the mastery of perception, the subtle art of leading a person to accept an idea so completely that it becomes indistinguishable from reality. And what rulers, priests, generals, and merchants have practiced for centuries is nothing but mass hypnosis, elevated into ritual, politics, and custom, because when people accept the suggestion that loyalty is sacred, or that obedience is virtue, or that sacrifice is noble, they bind themselves with invisible chains stronger than iron, and they live under the illusion of choice when in fact their actions are directed by the implanted images of power. And the hypnosis test merely reveals in miniature what occurs on a grand scale in the theater of society, a rehearsal where the stakes are trivial but the principle is universal, that men are easily persuaded to yield control if the suggestion comes cloaked in confidence and ritual, because what the subject obeys is not the hypnotist's words alone, but the authority carried in tone, presence, and rhythm, those subtle signals that bypass reason and slip into the subconscious, where the mind, ever eager for certainty, accepts guidance as if it were its own thought. And this explains why even intelligent men fall prey, why skepticism often collapses under pressure. For reason is slower than instinct, and when the hypnotist speaks with authority, the subject's body obeys before the intellect awakens, and by the time the intellect protests, the arm has risen, the eyes have closed, the decision has already been made. And this is the same pattern that governs entire nations, where the masses obey long before they reflect, where symbols, flags, anthems, and rituals work not on reason, but on that deep layer of suggestibility that lives in every human being. And thus the hypnosis test teaches not about entertainment, but about domination, not about tricks, but about truth, the truth that man is not as free as he believes, that his autonomy is fragile, that his will is a thin veil stretched over a vast landscape of impulses easily guided by those who know how to reach them, and the ruler who understands this can govern without chains or whips. For the strongest chains are those that men place upon themselves, believing them to be bonds of honor, duty, or love, and here lies the cunning of power, to make obedience feel voluntary, to make subjugation feel like self-expression, to make sacrifice feel like pride. And in this the prince and the hypnotist are the same. Their art lies in concealing command beneath the mask of choice, in planting thoughts so skillfully that the subject defends them as his own. And so when a crowd laughs at the man who cannot separate his fingers because of a suggestion, they laugh unknowingly at themselves, for they too live bound by suggestions accepted long ago, suggestions that shaped their morals, their loyalties, their desires, and these suggestions were planted not in an hour but over lifetimes, by parents, teachers, priests, and rulers, each of whom played the hypnotist's role, instilling ideas so deep that the people cannot even imagine themselves free of them. And if one asks why hypnosis is powerful, the answer is not the trick itself, but the human longing for direction, for certainty, for surrender, because deep within man is a desire to be relieved of the burden of constant choice, to lay down the heavy weight of freedom and to follow a voice that assures him he is safe, correct, purposeful. And this longing is what makes the subject lean forward eagerly in the hypnosis test, hoping to feel the magic. And it is the same longing that makes men march into war, donate their wealth, or die for causes they never examined. And thus the test is a mirror, a harmless reflection of the serious theater of life, where men reveal their weakness in laughter, unaware that the same mechanism keeps them obedient. And this is why one must study it, not for amusement but for wisdom. For he who understands how suggestion guides the masses can learn to resist it or to wield it. And Machiavelli would say that the wise ruler never relies on force alone, but always clothes force in suggestion. That it is better to have men believe they serve willingly than to know they are compelled. For belief sustains obedience longer than fear, and consent, even if false, prevents rebellion. And if belief is but a hypnotic state, then ruling is nothing but sustaining the trance of the population, reinforcing it through rituals, speeches, spectacles, and symbols, so that the people never awaken to the truth of their bondage. And yet those who awaken often feel disoriented, as a man emerging from hypnosis feels both foolish and enlightened, realizing that he had acted against his reason, and so too does the awakened citizen feel when he sees how his life was shaped, not by free will but by the implanted commands of power, commands he mistook for his own convictions. And if this truth is unsettling, it is only because it strips away the comfortable illusion of sovereignty, showing that freedom must be fought for not against external chains but against internal suggestions, the whispers planted in the subconscious by those who seek to rule. And so the hypnosis test, trivial though it seems, is in fact the key to understanding the fragility of human autonomy. Because if a mere stranger can guide your hand against your conscious will, then what can a lifetime of institutions, traditions, and authorities do to your mind? And how much of what you believe to be your own is truly yours, or merely the echo of a suggestion planted long ago, repeated until it became indistinguishable from truth? And thus the wise man does not dismiss hypnosis as theater, but studies it as a lesson in governance, persuasion, and human weakness. For the one who learns how easily perception bends will never again underestimate the power of belief, nor the ease with which masses can be directed, nor the fragility of freedom that depends not on chains but on awareness. And the prince who learns this will master not the body but the mind, which is the true battlefield where victory is lasting. For once the mind is conquered, the body follows willingly, and resistance ceases to exist except as a forgotten dream.